to Vantage. We are coming to you from New York. The election fever is over. President-elect Donald Trump is hitting the ground running. New reports say he spoke to Russia's Vladimir Putin last week. But the Kremlin says the call never happened. So why the mixed messaging? What is Donald Trump's plan to end the war in Ukraine? We'll bring you a report. And while Putin denies the call, another world leader is bragging about it. Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu. He has spoken thrice to Donald Trump. Will these talks lead to a ceasefire in West Asia, or will it escalate the fighting? And what does Donald Trump's cabinet look like? He's made more appointments. We'll tell you who made the cut and who did not. In Bangladesh, more protests against Sheikh Hasina. Dhaka is moving Interpol to arrest the ousted Prime Minister. In Pakistan, another terror attack in Quetta. Will instability derail their economic revival plans? And Pakistan's iron brother China has unveiled a massive stimulus package. Will the $1.4 trillion bailout revive the sleeping dragon? All this and more lined up. First, the headlines.
Khalistani terrorist Gurpatwant Singh Pannu threatens India again. Claims that they will target Hindu temples, including the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya, on the 16th and 17th of November. The threat video was reportedly recorded in Brampton, Canada. Last month, Pannu had warned passengers against flying on Air India flights. Big relief for Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. He manages to keep his job after surviving a parliamentary vote today. Ishiba took office 6 weeks ago and held a snap election in late October, where the ruling coalition lost its majority, its worst general election result in 15 years. Mauritius's Prime Minister concedes election defeat, with the opposition appearing to be poised for victory in the legislative polls. Opposition leader Naveen Ramgoolam looks set to be the new Prime Minister for the third time. The election campaign was overshadowed by a wiretapping scandal. Saudi Crown Prince demands immediate ceasefires in Gaza and Lebanon at the Arab Summit, but Israeli Foreign Minister rejects the establishment of a Palestinian state, claims it is not a realistic goal. This comes as Mohammed bin Salman urges Israel to respect Iran's sovereignty and not attack its territory. India won't be travelling to Pakistan for the Champions Trophy. The International Cricket Council informs the Pakistan Cricket Board. India has cited security concerns. PCB has now raised the matter with the Shehbaz Sharif government. The Champions Trophy tournament is slated to be played in Pakistan early next year.
Donald Trump is doing what he promised, trying to end the war in Ukraine. Last week, he took the first step. Trump spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin. The phone call happened on Thursday. But unlike other conversations, this one was not revealed, maybe because of the content. Trump reportedly made 4 points in this conversation. He urged Putin to not escalate the war. He reminded him of America's military deployments in Europe, sort of like a warning. He called for further talks to end the conflict, and finally he touched upon the issue of land, perhaps the possibility of Ukraine giving up land in exchange for peace. And what about the other side? Well, Russia says the call never happened. They're calling it pure fiction. But they have admitted that Trump's win is a positive development. President Putin also praised him last week. He called Trump a manly leader. That's the word he used. It's the sort of thing that Donald Trump loves to hear. But will these calls and praises translate into a ceasefire in Ukraine? Well, that depends on many variables, mainly 3. Number 1, what is Trump's plan? 3 of his staffers have revealed some details. Apparently, Donald Trump wants to freeze the current front line. He then wants to create a 1,200-kilometer buffer zone. Trump wants European soldiers to man it, maybe the Germans or the French or the British, definitely not American. And why would Russia agree to it? Because Ukraine will then abandon its NATO ambitions. And why would Kyiv agree to it? Because the US would then flood Ukraine with weapons, sort of like a deterrent to another Russian attack. Now, this plan raises a lot of questions, like, will Europeans enforce a buffer zone? Will Ukraine give up territory? And will Russia agree to the rearming of Ukraine? Frankly, this looks like a long-shot plan. Nonetheless, it is a start. It is certainly better than pouring billions into an endless war. Which brings us to variable number 2. What can Biden do in the next 70 days that he's still in office? Well, he'll be meeting Donald Trump on Wednesday. Reports say the president will try to lobby his successor, basically try to change his mind on Ukraine. Again, that's a long shot. Trump is keeping pro-Ukraine leaders out of his team, like Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo. His son also posted this message to Ukraine's president, and I'm quoting, "You're 38 days from losing your allowance. So good luck changing Trump's mind." Biden's other option lies in the US Congress. He can ask them to pass another package for Ukraine. Again, a tough choice. The new Congress will take charge in January. Most likely, it will be Republican controlled. So Biden's window is shrinking. He could also choose some nuclear options, maybe transfer frozen Russian state assets to Ukraine, that's worth around $5 billion, or maybe remove his red lines on the battlefield. Biden has stopped Zelensky from using American weapons to strike inside Russia. He could lift that red line in his final weeks in office. Next is variable number 3. What can Ukraine's European allies do? The EU's top diplomat visited Kyiv over the weekend. He promised unwavering support.
The clear purpose of this visit is to stress the European Union support to Ukraine. This support remains unwavering. This support is absolutely needed for you to continue defending yourself against Russian aggression.
The UK is also putting on a brave face. Their Prime Minister Keir Starmer is travelling to France. He will attend the French Armistice Day services. Now it's a big day for Western solidarity. It marks the end of the First World War, the victory of the Allies over Germany. Now normally, British Prime Ministers spend the day at home. But Keir Starmer is in France. He's the first British leader to attend the French Armistice Day since the Second World War. So quite a statement by Starmer. The pictures and statements are fine, but the math doesn't add up. The EU has given $131 billion to Ukraine. $131 billion, that's 27 countries put together. The US alone has given $174 billion. $174 billion. So Europe needs to find a lot of money, and they need to find it fast. Where does that leave Ukraine and Zelensky? In a very precarious situation. They're trading heavy blows with Russia. Moscow, in fact, launched around 145 drones at Ukraine. They killed 5 people and injured many more in the country's south. Kyiv says these were Iran-made drones. Around 62 of these drones were shot down. The rest presumably hit. Ukraine also fired a massive barrage at Russia. Around 84 drones were fired at different regions of Russia. Even the capital Moscow was targeted. And casualties? Just a few injuries in the Moscow region, plus flights had to be diverted from 3 airports. Now, this was the biggest drone fight in the war. But why now? Maybe Ukraine wants to show Trump what they're capable of, that they can still win this war. But the advantage lies with Russia, very clearly. October was a very good month for them. Reports say the best since 2022. They advanced almost 500 square kilometers into Ukrainian land. Plus, North Korean troops are on standby. They will enter the war in Russia's Kursk region. So all in all, it's looking very bad for Zelensky at the moment. Biden used to give him a blank check. Yes, there were some red lines, but Zelensky could plan the war as he wanted, pretty much. All that is about to change. He will soon face a very difficult question. Does he take Trump's deal, or does he fall back on European support to keep fighting? If he takes the deal, he loses land. If he doesn't, he could lose on the battlefield. Either way, the winner is Vladimir Putin. When he attacked Ukraine in 2022, Putin bet that Western solidarity would crumble. Almost 1,000 days later, it is happening. In the last week, Trump has spoken to multiple world leaders, but there's one person on his speed dial, and that's Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. Trump got elected on Wednesday. Since then, Netanyahu has spoken to him thrice. The first call came right after the win, when Netanyahu congratulated Trump, calling it, and I'm quoting, history's greatest comeback. And since then, there have been 2 more calls. So what are they talking about? The Trump team is tight-lipped, but Netanyahu has given a gist.
In the last few days, I have spoken 3 times with President-elect Donald Trump. These were good and very important conversations, talks that were designed to further tighten the strong alliance between Israel and the U.S. We see eye to eye the Iranian threat to all its components and the danger posed by it. We also see the great opportunities before Israel in the field of peace and its expansion, and in other fields.
Now, there are 2 parts to this conversation. The first is Iran. The Israeli Prime Minister says that they see eye to eye on the Iran threat. That's Trump and Netanyahu. They see eye to eye on the Iran threat. That's what Netanyahu says. The second is Israel's future and the war that it's fighting. 3 calls in 5 days clearly mean that Netanyahu has Trump's ear. But will he have Trump's support in everything that he wants? That's the key question. Look at the first Trump presidency. It was great for Israel. Trump brokered the Abraham Accords, the normalization deals between Israel and Arab states. He changed years of policy and moved the US embassy to Jerusalem. He pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, citing evidence presented by Netanyahu, and all of this cemented Trump's pro-Israel position. Israelis obviously loved him. Polls show that 70% of them wanted Donald Trump in the White House.
I think that Trump will do a lot of stuff also to put an end to the war and to bring back the hostages alive, hopefully. And Kamala didn't really talk about anything like that. And I don't think that she's really capable of doing stuff like that.
I think it's good for Israel, no doubt. It's better than Kamala Harris. But it's very good for Israel because he proved the last time he was a president, he moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and everything that he said, he did. So it's good for Israel, no doubt.
So Israelis hope for a repeat of US policies that favor them. But will Trump 2.0 deliver? Well, a lot has changed in West Asia since Trump's first term. Israel is at war in Gaza, and Israel is striking Lebanon. And all of this goes against Donald Trump's election promises. He is basically anti-war. At least that's what he says, that he's anti-war. Trump thinks that wars are too expensive. He doesn't want America involved in global conflicts. So he will try to end the Gaza war. It's something that he's mentioned before. He's urged Israel to do it quickly. But that doesn't serve Netanyahu. The Israeli Prime Minister wants Hamas eliminated. He says that's the end goal. And he won't stop the war until this goal is achieved. Also, he's part of a coalition government, mostly made of far-right parties. All of them want to end Hamas. If Netanyahu compromises, they may pull support from him. And that means he'll be out of power. So the Israeli Prime Minister has 2 choices. Listen to Trump and risk his premiership, or continue the war and risk Washington's wrath. It's a difficult choice. Perhaps that's what these phone calls are all about, to push for a third option, a third choice, to convince Trump that this war is good. Meanwhile, the current administration also wants to end the war, the current US administration. On Tuesday, the Israeli president will meet Joe Biden, the American president. He'll be at the White House, and they will discuss the situation in Lebanon and Gaza. Reports suggest that Biden is in a hurry. He wants to wrap up the war while he's still in office. So he's pushing for a ceasefire in Gaza and a deal with Lebanon. Now, Israel does not seem too enthusiastic about it. But there's another key party who's not very happy, and that is Qatar. Doha was acting as a mediator in the Gaza war, a channel of communication between Israel and Hamas, but that's not the case anymore. Qatar has suspended ceasefire talks. It says talks will resume when both sides show, and I'm quoting, willingness. Now, Doha has not given any other reasons, but reports say that the move came after pressure from Washington, D.C. The US did not like Hamas' presence in Doha. They wanted Qatar to expel Hamas. Remember, Hamas has its political office in Doha. It's been there since the year 2012. On Saturday, several reports emerged citing that Qatar had agreed with the US, that Qatar had asked Hamas to close this office in Doha. But Qatar has since dismissed these reports, calling them inaccurate. Hamas too has denied the reports. So that's where things stand at the moment. Biden wants to wrap up this war. Netanyahu does not. Qatar has suspended ceasefire talks, and Trump is eager to enter office and end all of this quickly. Whoever prevails, the next few months will be crucial for West Asia. Donald Trump has already started making moves. He's naming his team for his second presidential term. Last week we mentioned Susie Wiles, Trump's incoming chief of staff, and today we have more names. Trump has picked his new border czar. His name is Thomas Homan. He worked under Trump last time as well as the acting director of Immigration and Customs. Then there's Elise Stefanik, a senior member of the House of Representatives. She may become the US ambassador to the United Nations. We'll have more names coming in soon. But we also know two people who won't make the cut. Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo. It seems they have been punished for harboring presidential ambitions. Although one person who challenged Trump may escape his wrath, reports say that Vivek Ramaswamy is still in contention. Our next report has the details.
Trump has named a new border czar, Thomas Homan. Trump says that the former acting director of the US Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, will be in charge of America's borders. Homan has worked with Trump before. Trump was the one who made him acting head of ICE, so it seems Homan will pick up where he left off. He will also be in charge of deporting illegal immigrants. Homan says he will conduct workplace raids. ICE will find illegal immigrants at their places of work, round them up, and send them back to their countries of origin. So Trump's promised mass deportation drive will start from day one. Next, we have Elise Stefanik. Reports say that she has been offered the post of US ambassador to the United Nations. Stefanik is a Republican member of the US House of Representatives. She's the chair of the House Republican Conference, making her the fourth-ranking House Republican. Stefanik has been a loyal Trump supporter, so the ambassador's post is seen as a reward for her loyalty. It's a stark contrast to what's happening to one of her predecessors, Nikki Haley. Trump appointed Haley as US ambassador to the UN back in 2017. But yesterday, he put out this message. Trump politely but firmly said that Haley is out, along with another member of his first administration, Mike Pompeo. Pompeo was the US Secretary of State and Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, under Trump. But he's also being shunned this time around. Reports say it's because both of them opposed Trump. Haley ran for president, and Pompeo had considered doing the same. They both backed Trump later than most other Republicans as well. But one person seems to have escaped the same fate, Vivek Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy also made a presidential bid. He tried to win the Republican Party nomination just like Haley. But once he lost, Ramaswamy was quick to endorse Trump, and he campaigned for Trump vigorously. So reports say he's now in contention to join the Trump cabinet. He's considered a long-shot candidate for the post of Secretary of State. But whatever Trump decides and whoever he picks, he wants to make sure that they get to the job on day one. To streamline their confirmation, Trump has made a demand of the US Senate. He wants recess appointments back. Normally, the US Senate has to confirm all presidential appointees. It's a long-drawn process that can stretch for years. Trump is having none of that. He wants to use his presidential powers to ram his candidates through. Trump wants senators to go on recess, or basically take a break, so that the power to appoint people falls to him. The US president has this power, but the Senate hasn't allowed a president to do this for years. They just don't take long breaks anymore, so that the president can't bypass them. But Trump wants to change this. And he's offering the Senate leader's post to the person who agrees. The plan seems to be working. Some senators are backing the move.
I want to also
senators like Florida's Rick Scott. He says he will do as Trump says if he's made Senate Majority Leader. Scott's declaration won him support from people as influential as Elon Musk. So the power games are already underway. But as Trump prepares to confirm his own appointments, he has told Republicans to stop the Democrats from doing the same. Joe Biden and the Democrats are still in charge till January, and they may try to appoint their own judges in the weeks ahead before Trump takes over. Trump has called that unacceptable. But since the Democrats currently control the Senate, they may still manage to appoint the judges and get one last victory before Trump takes over. A victory is something the Democrats desperately need right now because the bad news just hasn't stopped over the last week. The latest blow is a financial one. Reports say that the Democrats are in debt. Kamala Harris's campaign reportedly owes $20 million to vendors, even after raising over $1 billion in campaign funds. These figures are yet to be confirmed, but Trump was gleeful when he heard the news. He put out this post, offering to help them during the difficult period for the sake of unity. Trump was trolling the Democrats, which pretty much sums up their week and their entire presidential campaign.
Now let's turn to Bangladesh. The chorus is growing for Sheikh Hasina's arrest. Courts have already ordered it, but Hasina remains in a safe house in New Delhi. So what is Dhaka doing? It is seeking Interpol's help. Now, Interpol, as you know, is a global policing organization. They have around 200 member nations and regions. Bangladesh's interim regime wants Interpol to step in, to issue a red notice alert for Sheikh Hasina. What does that mean? A red notice is basically a request to Interpol's member nations. If a suspect is in your country, try to arrest them or make them surrender. In this case, that suspect is Sheikh Hasina. A Bangladeshi court has already issued a warrant for her arrest, so technically Interpol can step in. Having said that, this is an ousted prime minister. The cases against her have a political dimension, so it's not clear if Interpol will help. Which brings us to India. What will New Delhi do if a red notice is issued? Well, a red notice is not an international warrant. Interpol says that countries can make up their own mind as to how they want to respond, and India will not be legally bound by it. But a bigger worry is the public sentiment in Bangladesh. You see, Sunday was a big day. November 10th marks Democracy Day in Bangladesh. On that day in 1987, protests broke out against dictator Irshad. The trigger? The death of an Awami League worker, a member of Sheikh Hasina's political party. And since then, November 10th has been Democracy Day in Bangladesh. So on Sunday, the Awami League tried to hold a rally, sort of like a comeback attempt. Look at what happened next. Student protesters and BNP workers flooded the streets. BNP is Bangladesh Nationalist Party, Khaleda Zia's party, one of the biggest political parties in the country. Together, they swarmed the streets of Dhaka. So the Awami League rally could not really happen. Before that, on Friday, the BNP held another rally, this one with a dark tone. It featured a woman dressed in Sheikh Hasina's attire. She was locked inside a cage. Take a look at this. So much for a new Bangladesh. These protesters are not interested in moving on. They're hanging on to the past. And what about their new leader, Mohammed Yunus? Well, he's enabling all of it. Yunus's advisors have removed Sheikh Hasina's father, Mujibur Rahman's portrait from the presidential palace. Remember, Sheikh Mujib is not just Hasina's father, he is also the founder of Bangladesh. Yet the new leaders of Dhaka disrespect him. Look at what Yunus's minister wrote. The photo of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the post-1971 fascist, is removed from Darbar Hall. It is a shame for us that we couldn't remove his pictures from Banga Bhavan after the 5th of August. The security situation is also deteriorating. Last week, Bangladesh's Human Rights Commission resigned. The commission had 6 members, including a chairman. All of them quit together. Do you know why? Likely because of pressure from Yunus. Their recent report talked about rising violence in the country. Mob attacks, rapes, beatings. This is what they mentioned in their report. And weeks later, all of them had to quit. Is this the reform that Mohammad Yunus promised? A complete realignment of Bangladesh's identity, an erasure of its past? And if so, what is the global community doing about it? Until now, Yunus had an ally in Washington, D.C., US President Joe Biden. But Trump's victory has flipped that equation. You see, Yunus is a prominent supporter of the Democrats. In 2016, he supported Hillary Clinton's campaign. His Grameen Bank donated between $100,000 and $250,000. His Grameen Research donated between $25,000 and $50,000 to the Clinton campaign. When Trump won, Yunus was heartbroken. Listen to his comments.
Trump's win has hit us so hard that this morning, I could hardly speak. I lost all strength. Should I even come here? Of course, I should. We must not allow this lapse into depression. We will overcome these dark clouds.
Now, you know Donald Trump, he's the sort of person who holds a grudge. We saw that after he won the 2016 election. A Bangladeshi delegation visited the US after his win, and this is what Trump asked them. Where is the microfinance guy from Dhaka? I heard he donated to see me lose. Well, that microfinance guy is now ruling Bangladesh. So will Trump put pressure on him, or will he follow Biden's policy? A lot really depends on how the transition goes. I'm sure the US security establishment has long-term plans for Dhaka, especially with respect to China and India. They will relay these plans to Trump's team. If they like it, he may stick to the policy. If not, he may ramp up the pressure. But India cannot just rely on Trump to address its concerns in Dhaka. That assumption itself is a surrender of India's influence. Our policy needs to be proactive, strong enough to protect India's interests, and soft enough to not push Dhaka into the arms of China or the US. As always, it's a tough balance. To Pakistan now, where a blast at a railway station has killed 25 people and injured many more. The blast took place in the Balochistan province. The police have called it a suicide attack. The Balochistan Liberation Army has claimed responsibility for this. It's the latest in a series of such attacks. Since the start of this year, nearly 800 people have been killed in terror attacks across Pakistan. 254 people were killed just in the month of August. Pakistan ranks 4th among the countries most affected by terrorism and arguably first in the export of it. So what explains this rise in attacks, and what is Islamabad doing about it? Here's our report.
It was around 8:45 a.m. local time. Passengers were waiting at a busy platform in the Quetta railway station. That's when a blast struck the station. It happened near a ticket booth when 2 trains were scheduled to depart. 26 people were killed, including 14 soldiers. Nearly 60 were injured.
यहाँ पे गर्मियों के रहने के लिए आए थे कोटा में और अपने गांव वापस जा रहे थे जाफराबाद और यहाँ पर हम रेलवे स्टेशन पर पहुंचे जैसे ही तो धमाका हो गया और हम अस्पताल पहुंचे।
एक मेरा मामू था और एक मेरा रिश्तेदार था। जैसे ही हम सुबह सवेरे उठे हैं रेलवे स्टेशन पे धमाके की खबरें चल रही थी न्यूज़ पे, तो हमें इतला मिला है कि भाई आपका मामू और दूसरा रिश्तेदार चाय पीने के लिए वॉक करने के लिए सैर व तफरी करने के लिए राइश पजीर हैं, वो रेलवे स्टेशन गए हुए। तो हमें वहाँ से मालूम हुआ कि आप लोगों का एक बंदा ज़ख्मी है और दूसरे का मालूम नहीं हो रहा है।
The police initially thought it was a bomb in the luggage, but then it turned out to be a suicide bomber. He was carrying around 6 to 8 kgs of explosives. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has condemned the attackers, saying they will pay a heavy price. The Baloch Liberation Army has already claimed responsibility. It's a separatist group banned in Pakistan. The BLA seeks independence for Balochistan, and this isn't the first attack the group has been behind. In August, the BLA killed 74 people in coordinated attacks. The group targeted police stations, railway lines and highways. It also opposes China-led projects in the region, including a port and a gold and copper mine. It has repeatedly attacked Chinese projects, even killing several Chinese nationals. But it's not the only group Pakistan is worried about. The bulk of the attacks have targeted two provinces, Balochistan in the southwest and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in the northwest. The BLA is behind most of the attacks in Balochistan, but in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, it's the TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. In 2022, the TTP ended its ceasefire with Islamabad, and that has resulted in a rapid escalation of terror. For nearly 2 years, the TTP has conducted multiple attacks, killing several people and injuring hundreds. So Pakistan has a terror problem, and it has tried to counter it. In the month of June, Islamabad launched a nationwide anti-terror campaign. It was called Operation Azm-e-Ishtikam. But that hasn't helped. In the first 8 months of 2024, nearly 800 people were killed in terror attacks. Over 700 have been injured. So there's been a drastic spike in attacks, and it comes as the country's economy continues to weaken. In July, Islamabad secured a $7 billion debt relief package from the IMF, that's the International Monetary Fund, but that could be at risk. This week, the IMF will hold a performance review with an unexpected visit to the country. Terror attacks amid this economic turmoil don't bode well for Pakistan. It looks like its tryst with terror is coming back to haunt it. Islamabad is used to exporting terror, but now the chickens have come home to roost.
Our next story is about China. The country is gearing up to face economic headwinds. Growth is already slow. China still hasn't completely recovered from the Wuhan virus pandemic and the subsequent collapse of their property sector. But Beijing is expecting another blow soon, in the form of a Donald Trump presidency in the US. Trump has vowed to put tariffs on Chinese goods. That's basically a tax on Chinese imports. And these tariffs, he says, could go up to 60%, as high as 60%, meaning Chinese goods will become very expensive for Americans, and so their demand will go down. So China's export sector is bracing for a major hit. As you can see, there's chaos all around, but the Chinese markets were still hopeful. They expected the government to do something about all of this. They were eagerly awaiting a new stimulus package. It came last Friday, and all their hopes were dashed. Because instead of a big injection into the economy, what they got was a debt swap plan.
This 6 trillion yuan debt ceiling will be arranged over 3 years. 2 trillion yuan per year from 2024 to 2026 to support local governments in replacing all kinds of hidden debt. Starting from 2024, 800 billion yuan will be arranged from new local government special bonds every year for 5 consecutive years to supplement government financial resources, specifically for debt repayment, and a total of 4 trillion yuan of hidden debt can be replaced.
Local governments in China will be allowed to take new loans now. That's what the plan is. These are your city and state level governments. Their debt ceiling will be raised by 6 trillion yuan. So they will get 4 trillion through special bonds. That comes to a total of 10 trillion yuan, which is equal to 1.4 trillion US dollars. That is Beijing's grand plan for the economy, allowing local governments to take more loans, to borrow more money. It sounds rather underwhelming, and that's exactly what the markets felt. Asian stocks fell today because of China's underwhelming stimulus package. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index closed almost 1.5% down. Clearly, Beijing's new package has not inspired confidence. But they insist that it is a good move. They say it's a long-term plan to fix the fundamentals.
By 2028, the total amount of hidden debt of local governments will be significantly decreased from 14.3 trillion yuan to 2.3 trillion yuan. The average annual reduction will be lowered from 2.86 trillion yuan to 460 billion yuan, less than 1/6 of the original amount.
Now, one of the major challenges that China faces is local government debt, the so-called hidden debt. Local governments in China are heavily in debt. It's unsustainable, and this debt has been accumulated over the years. But this debt is also kept off the books. which is why it is called hidden debt. It is off the books. It is built through opaque financial instruments, something called local government financing vehicles, or LGFVs, local government financing vehicles. Now, this debt has been kept off the government balance sheets. It's not publicly known, but these local governments still have to pay heavy interest rates on it. And where do they get this money to pay the interest? By diverting money. The money taken on loan is not spent on infrastructure as it is meant to be. Governments cut the salaries of civil servants, they delay payments to contractors, and they do all of this to service this hidden debt. China is worried that this could lead to deflation and prolong the current situation, the current slowdown. So Beijing has granted local governments a lifeline with this new debt package. Now the local governments can swap their hidden debt for the normal kind. They'll get the normal debt with lower interest rates. That's the debt package in a nutshell. And China insists that this is a great move. But here's the problem with that. Beijing says its hidden debt comes up to about 14 trillion yuan. But the International Monetary Fund puts it at 60 trillion. 14 to 60, look at the gap. It sounds like Beijing is trying to downplay the problem. And even if we assume that China's figures are not fudged, which is a big assumption, the relief amount is still not enough. $1.4 trillion will be spent over 5 years. It is a slow fix. It's not an urgent stimulus, which is why the markets are disappointed. But Beijing has a reason for keeping the purse strings tight. As I mentioned earlier, a trade war may erupt soon. No one knows what will happen when Trump takes office, and his tariffs would be a major blow to China. So maybe they're just saving up for the big fight ahead. Now let's turn our attention to Haiti, a small Caribbean nation which is home to about 11 million people, as well as gang violence, mass displacement, hunger, and worsening political turmoil. Haiti's last president was murdered in 2021. Their previous prime minister was ousted in April this year. So in the month of May, an interim prime minister was hired. Former civil servant Gary Connick. He was supposed to pave the way for presidential elections next year and in the process also bring some stability in the country. But just 6 months later, he too has been ousted. He is being replaced by a businessman called Alex Didier Fils-Aimé. So who is this man? Why is he the new prime minister? And is this a sign of more political mayhem in Haiti? Here's a report.
Haiti is no stranger to chronic political instability. But now it has plunged deeper into a constitutional crisis. Its prime minister has been fired, and the owner of a chain of dry cleaners is all set to take his position. To understand what happened, let's discuss the Caribbean nation's political landscape. There are no democratically elected officials in Haiti. Haiti's last president, Jovenel Moïse, was murdered in July 2021. No elections have been held since then. The previous Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, was ousted in April this year when a coalition of gangs took over the capital of Port-au-Prince and fueled violence, acute hunger and mass displacement. So a transitional council was established in April. It was tasked with a crucial job, choosing Haiti's next Prime Minister in the hopes that it would quell turmoil in the nation. And in May, Gary Connick was appointed as the interim Prime Minister. He's a long-time civil servant who has worked with the United Nations. He has been removed from traditional party politics. He hadn't lived in Haiti for more than a decade. He was considered a favorite of the international community. So he was seen as the obvious choice to restore stability. Yet his appointment did anything but that. The council has long been at odds with Connick. Gangs have ramped up attacks in recent weeks, exacerbating the situation. And now, just 6 months after his appointment, Connick has been dismissed. He's being replaced with Alex Didier Fils-Aimé. Fils-Aimé is a prominent businessman and the former president of Haiti's Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And now, he will take Connick's seat in a move which experts call a politically motivated coup. They have questioned the legal authority of the council to take this step. In Haiti, only the parliament has the authority to fire a prime minister. So Kuni says that the move lacks legitimacy and claims that it amounts to nothing more than a maneuver that further weakens Haiti and seriously compromises chances of overcoming the crisis. So what is the ousted Prime Minister going to do about it? Kuni intends to challenge any illegal action motivated by narrow political interests. In short, he doesn't plan on going easily. But at this point, there's not much Kuni or Haiti can do except to brace themselves for what is about to come. Because in all likelihood, this move will worsen the political turmoil in Haiti, where half the population faces acute hunger, more than 700,000 people have fled their homes, and the police are outmatched and outgunned by gangs who already control 85% of the capital. So, this latest move will only breed more instability and mayhem in Haiti.
Our next story is about Africa and Russia. President Vladimir Putin is making another play for the continent. He just held a summit in the resort town of Sochi. Russia invited ministers and business leaders from several African nations. They held talks with their Russian counterparts and worked on new deals. Moscow is calling the summit a major win. They say it has dashed Western plans to isolate Russia, and Putin is not done yet. He plans to deepen the relationship with Africa. He has promised to provide total support to Russia's friends in the continent. Here's our report.
Russia is courting Africa. A summit took place over the weekend, the Russia-Africa Partnership Forum. It was held in the Russian city of Sochi. It's a resort town on the Black Sea. That is where Russia laid out the red carpet for ministers and business delegations from Africa. Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, was in charge of the summit, and yesterday he conveyed President Vladimir Putin's words to his audience.
I would like to reiterate that our country will continue to provide total support to our African friends in different sectors, ensuring sustainable development, the struggle against terrorism and extremism, combating epidemics, food problems, and the consequences of natural disasters.
Putin has promised that he will continue to provide total support to Russia's friends in Africa. And Russia does have a lot of friends there. Let's look at the Sahel states first. Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. These three nations saw military coups recently. They are now ruled by military juntas. The juntas have shunned their traditional partnership with their former colonial overlord, France. Instead, they have all turned to Russia for support.
And today, Africans and Burkinabes are rediscovering Russia as a world power, as a partner we can work with.
From now on, we're not going to take our instructions from Paris, Washington, or anywhere else. We want respectful partnerships, sincere partnerships, win-win partnerships.
Respect and a win-win partnership. That is what the Sahel states want, and that is why they have turned to Russia. Moscow has soldiers in these countries, mercenaries who are helping them fight against religious extremists. France, the US and other Western nations had partnered with the Sahel states before the coups. But the juntas believed that the West wasn't doing enough, which is why they turned to Russia. And there's an additional advantage. Moscow isn't the type to lecture any government, whereas the West is known for its sermons. So it's clear who the Sahel juntas prefer. And it isn't just them.
Yeah, Russia, it's a good country for us. Besides that, President Putin, he understands the Africans. He is pro-us, pro-Africans. So this is why I personally align with the Russians.
Lesotho, Nigeria, Ethiopia, multiple Central African states. All of them sent their delegations to Sochi. They are all keen to work with Russia. This is a diplomatic win for Vladimir Putin. Ever since the war in Ukraine began, the West has been trying to isolate Russia, but it clearly hasn't succeeded. This weekend's event was the second high-profile summit hosted by Russia in a month. Putin held the BRICS summit in late October in the city of Kazan. And now we have this Russia-Africa Partnership Forum in Sochi. Both events catered to the global south. They were a way for Russia to try and reshape the current world order, and pitch for a multipolar world instead of one dominated by the West. And by the looks of it, Moscow is well on its way to doing that.
Now let's talk about the US chip maker Intel. This has been a difficult year for the company. Intel has not been able to catch up with its competitors. Its sales are plummeting, revenue is down. So Intel has axed 15,000 positions globally. It has fired 15,000 people. That's about 15% of its workforce. Understandably, people are not happy. Employee morale has taken a hit. So Intel has come up with a brilliant idea. They are introducing free tea and coffee in their offices to boost morale. And this benevolence has become an internet joke. So what are some of the other bizarre morale boosters in companies, and do they even work? Here's a report.
Once a Silicon Valley leader, now fallen from grace. We are talking about US chipmaker Intel. It is struggling to keep up with rivals like Nvidia. Its costs are too high, margins are too low. Its stocks are falling, sales are tumbling, revenue is dropping. So one thing is increasing: losses. In the first quarter, Intel lost $437 million. In the second quarter, $1.6 billion. And now, in the third quarter, Intel has reported a loss of a whopping $16.6 billion. But this last bit is not a shock for the company. In fact, Intel has been on a long road to recovery. And in August, they announced that 15% of their workforce won't be joining them on this depressing journey. Intel axed 15,000 jobs globally, through layoffs, buyouts, and early retirement offers. This was a major part of cost-cutting measures at the company to slash $10 billion in expenses. But some other steps were taken as well, like ending corporate funding for mobile phone plans of employees, grounding air shuttles that flew workers between offices, and cutting complimentary tea, coffee, and fruits in offices. So after the announcements, Intel workers arrived to find empty seats and emptier kitchens. Do you know what's worse than losing your friends at work? Losing access to caffeine. So employee morale took a dive. A company full of math and science geniuses. And no one planned for this emotional crisis. Months later, amid ongoing layoffs, Intel has found its emotional quota. No, they will not be bringing people back. They want to bring tea and coffee back to make the remaining employees feel better. But only that, no fruits, still. So this benevolence has turned Intel into internet's favorite joke. People are appreciating this massive bonus, calling it an addition to unlocked washrooms at work. But Intel is not an isolated case. Many companies have strange morale-boosting tactics. In 2022, Meta tried to boost morale with new slogans at work. Like this one: Meta. Metamates. Me. Meaning, employees are expected to prioritize Meta, followed by their colleagues or metamates, and then themselves. Last year, a Chinese firm asked their female employees to put makeup at work to motivate their male colleagues. While some companies are outright crass, others want to be loud. This year, during an internal event, consulting giant McKinsey blasted Eminem and Bob Marley music, hoping that it pumps up disgruntled partners. But once in a blue moon, some companies get it right. Like the Japanese tech company, Note, that has employed felines. Netflix, that has introduced an unlimited vacation policy. And this company in India's city of Chennai, which has gifted 28 cars to its employees to boost their morale. Now, only one thing could top this, like maybe reintroducing fruits at Intel offices.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Thousands march on the streets of Valencia demanding the resignation of their leader over flood response. Dutch police use a hologram to try and solve a 15-year-old murder case in Amsterdam, and an elephant named Mary surprises scientists after she uses a water hose to bathe herself. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1918, the First World War came to an end. This was after the Allied forces and Germany signed an armistice agreement. The First World War killed nearly 22 million people, making it one of the deadliest conflicts in history. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.